Hello students, today we are going to read the next story, Dr. Heidegger's experiment. It's from the second paper of our syllabus. Before starting the story, let's talk about the writer, Nathaniel Hawthorne. He was born in 1804 in Salem, Massachusetts, and he was educated at Bowdoin College. He was an American short story writer and novelist. He died in 1864. He has written a very big number of short stories. He was also a part of the prominent circle of Massachusetts writers and philosophers such as Emerson and Thoreau. And his major works include The Scarlet Letter, The House of the Seven Gobles, The Blithedale Romance, and The Marble Forum. So this story, Dr. Heidegger's experiment, this is a story about an experiment being performed by a doctor among his friends. That experiment is narrated in a way in which the experiment is being narrated in a kind of first-hand experience in which the narrator or the writer himself has been an eyewitness. He narrates the story in such a manner. This story is like a commentary on the nature of human, that how we feel, how we behave, and how we don't learn from things. So this is a quite interesting story in which Dr. Heidegger tries some experiment among his friends, and when he sees the result of that experiment, then he learns a big lesson and not to search anything of that sort furthermore. So let's read it. That very singular man, old Dr. Heidegger, once invited 4 venerable friends to meet him in his study. There were 3 white-bearded gentlemen, Mr. Medbourne, Colonel Killigrew, and Mr. Gascoigne, and a withered gentlewoman whose name was the widow Wycherley. So the story begins like this, that very singular means very peculiar, very specific kind of character this man Dr. Heidegger was. So he says that very singular man means that a specific kind of man, Dr. Heidegger, who has specific traits, who has specific habits. He once invited 4 venerable friends, 4 very gentle friends, 4 very reputed friends of him to meet him in his study. He has invited these friends of him to visit him, to meet him in his study. In his house, he has a room, study room, and there he has invited all these friends of him. Generally, what happens that whenever some guest comes to our house, or when we go to someone's house, then we sit in the drawing room or the guest room. Generally, we see guests in our drawing room or in the guest room, but he has invited them to his study, means for a specific purpose he has invited them. Otherwise the study is a private space, but he has invited them to his study. And now we have the names of them, that who they are. There were 3 white bearded gentlemen, means those gentlemen, those people, those friends of him whom he has invited, they were all old in age. The first one was Mr. Medbourne, second one is Mr. Colonel Killigrew, and the third is Mr. Gascoigne. And there was also a lady among them who is known by the name Widow Wycherley. She was a widow now, so this is her name, Widow Wycherley. They were all melancholy old creatures who had been unfortunate in life and whose greatest misfortune it was that they were not long ago in their graves. So he says that all these people, they also singular, they also peculiar, they were also have some special trait in their characters. That's why perhaps Dr. Heidegger has invited them. And what is that? That these people have been unfortunate in life. These old melancholy creatures, melancholy means sad, sorrowful, melancholy, sad creatures they were, उदास, बहुत ही दुखी ये प्राणी थे जिनको डॉक्टर हिडेगर ने बुलाया था. And they had been unfortunate in life. Throughout their life they have been unfortunate. They have didn't have that much great a fortune or that much good luck to achieve something good in their life. And the biggest misfortune which we can say that they have is what? That they should have been in their graves long ago, but still they are not in their graves. This is their biggest misfortune. यानी उनको बहुत पहले मर जाना चाहिए था. They should have died long ago, but still they haven't died. They are craving for that death, that final call from the God. This is their biggest misfortune. उनके जो भी misfortune उन्होंने लाइफ में फेस किए थे, उनमें सबसे बिगेस्ट, सबसे बड़ा जो misfortune है वो क्या है? वो ये है that they have not been to that final abode where they are supposed to reach even earlier. Mr. Medbourne, now the writer tells us about their specific characters, specific misfortunes and specific persons. In the vigor of his age had been a prosperous merchant, but had lost his all by a frantic speculation and was now little better than a mendicant. Now the first person, Mr. Medbourne, he says when he was young, when he was in the prime of his youth, the prime of his age, then he was a very prosperous merchant. He was a very successful merchant, a very rich merchant he was, but he had lost his whole property, his whole wealth, his whole business by a frantic speculation. This kind of thing happens many times. You might have read this thing in newspaper sometimes, that we predict something in business or in agriculture, everywhere, है ना. आपने सुना होगा अपने पेरेंट्स से, जब हम खेती की बात करते हैं ना, कई बार हम ऐसे अनुमान लगा लेते हैं पिछली साल का जो एक जो ट्रेंड होता है उसको देख के कि भी पिछली साल गंवार जो था वो 20,000 रुपये क्विंटल बिका था, तो इस बार हमें गंवार की खेती खूब करनी चाहिए. ऐसा हुआ था, आपने पीछे देखा होता, आप घर पे पूछेंगे तो आपको पता लगेगा कि एक साल ऐसा हुआ कि गंवार जो था उसका रेट बहुत बहुत ऊंचा रहा. अगली साल क्या हुआ कि बहुत लोगों ने वो गंवार की खेती की और जो रेट्स जो थे वो 2000 रहे सिर्फ, है ना, यानी 10 टाइम्स लेस. तो क्या हुआ? नुकसान हुआ, है ना. तो that kind of happening has happened with that peasant, that merchant, which has happens with everybody at times, that due to a speculation which has gone wrong, he has lost his whole wealth, property and business, and now he is a little better than a mendicant. Now he is just a bit better than a beggar. Means there is not a big difference between him and a beggar. Colonel Killigrew had wasted his best years and his health and substance in the pursuit of sinful pleasures, which had given birth to a brood of pains such as the gout and divers other torments of soul and body. Now we come to the next person, Colonel Killigrew. When he was young, then he has lost all the bodily properties, all the mental properties of his in the pursuit of sinful things. I mean, he was not a good person. He might have followed the intoxications, नशा किया होगा, है ना, ड्रिंक किया होगा, all these sinful pleasures he has tried in his life, and the result was what? That it has given birth to a brood of pains. Brood of pains means a horde of pains, a group of pains. कई तरह के pains, कई तरह के जो शारीरिक problems थी वो पैदा हुई उनके, such as the gout, जैसे कि gout is a disease of joints in which we have swelling in our joints and pain, जिसको हम जनरल भाषा में गठिया कहते हैं ना, and diverse other such pains which he has got out of these pleasure indulgences of his youth age. Mr. Gascoigne was a ruined politician. Now this third person, Mr. Gascoigne, he was a ruined politician. Means again, he was again also misfortunate. He was also not a successful politician. He was a ruined politician, a man of evil fame, or at least had been so till time had buried him from the knowledge of the present generation and made him obscure instead of infamous. He says he was such a bad politician he was, that perhaps he has been gone to obscurity than in infamousness, that now this generation, the present generation, has forgotten everything about him. Instead of knowing his bad habits or his infamousness, they have just forgotten him altogether. Such a bad politician he was that even people has now forgotten him completely. As for the widow Wycherley, tradition tells us that she was a great beauty in her day. Now look again, that that widow Wycherley, she has been a very beautiful woman in her day, means in her young age, in her youth age, but still she was misfortune, because if we talk about those days of which the writer is talking about, in those days the only possession which a woman could have was her beauty. The only thing which could lead her in a happy life, in a successful life, or in a peaceful life was her physical appearance only, because that was the man governed society at that time. So she was very beautiful, but for a long while past she had lived in deep seclusion. But for a last some time she had been living in a very secluded position, in a loneliness. On account of certain scandalous stories which had prejudiced the gentry of the town against her. And what is the reason why she is living in seclusion, why she is living alone? Because some scandalous stories about her have circulated among the gentry, among the people of the area, and due to those stories, due to those scandalous stories, she has been secluded from the society and living a lonely life. It is a circumstance worth mentioning that each of these three old gentlemen, Mr. Madbone, Colonel Killigrew, and Mr. Gascoigne, were early lovers of the widow Wycherley. Now, one more thing which connects these four people together is what? The first one is that they were all misfortunate in their life. They were not lucky kind of people in their life. And one more thing which connects them together, which is a connecting link between them, is what? That all these three gentlemen have been the lovers of this lady once upon a time, and had once been on the point of cutting each other's throat for her sake. And they were so much in love with this lady and so much in rivalry with each other that they could have killed each other just to gain the hand of widow Wycherley. And before proceeding further, I will merely hint that Dr. Heidegger and all his foul guests were sometimes thought to be a little besides themselves. And he says, before proceeding further, before going ahead in the story, telling about the real topic of the story, real subject of today's story, let me tell one more thing this also, that all these four people who are gathered here and Dr. Heidegger himself, means all these five people, they have once in their lifetime have been something other than what they are. यानी कुछ न कुछ फ्लक्चुएशन जो था, कुछ न कुछ जो एक डाइवर्जन जो था वो उनके बिहेवियर में था कभी ना कभी लाइफ में, एंड दैट्स व्हाई दे हैव बीन मिसफॉर्चुनेट. As is not unfrequently the case with old people when worried either by present troubles or woeful recollections. Means they have lost their mind, they have behaved in an eccentric manner once or at other time, and the reason he says might be the case with all the old people, that they have two things: either they are worried by the present state or by the woeful recollections of the past. My dear old friends, said Dr. Heidegger, motioning them to be seated, and then Dr. Heidegger just signaling them to sit down, started to speak that, my dear old friends, I am desirous of your assistance in one of those little experiments with which I amuse myself here in my study. He says, why I have invited you today is that I need your assistance in conducting one of my experiment, with which among those many other experiments with which I amuse myself here in this study of mine. That's why I have invited you. He signaled them to sit down, and after that he told the purpose, that why I have invited you here and why: to conduct an experiment or to get assistance in an experiment which I think I should perform. So this is it for the day. Thank you.